What's going on, guys, and welcome back to WrestleRant, where every single Tuesday I, Graham Gius Matthews, break down the pay-per-views that I watch on the WWE Network. And of course, today, ahead of Battleground this coming Sunday, presented by SmackDown Live, we're talking Battleground 2016, last year's installment, the last non-Big Four pay-per-view that was shared by both Raw and SmackDown. For a lot of people, the end of an era. It was one day before we had distinct rosters for Raw and SmackDown, one day before the brand extension went into effect. So really ending that PG era, the old era, whatever the hell you want to call it, the old new era, because they were calling it the new era even then. So again, I have no idea, whatever the hell you want to call it, but still, they went out on a high note. Far and away my favorite pay-per-view event from 2016, and not even close. Start to finish, top to bottom, a tremendous show. We're breaking it down here for you guys today. So on the kickoff show, very quickly, which is separate from the actual broadcast on the network, it's still available on the network, the kickoff show. It's an hour long. I wouldn't recommend going out of your way to watch this one match on the kickoff show. I didn't rewatch it, just from what I can recall. The Usos versus Breezango. Fun match while it lasted. Both teams went to SmackDown Live. And at that point in time, Breezango were babyfaces, or rather heels. They came across as babyfaces here, but they were heels. And the Usos were babyfaces. A very fun 5-minute match for what it was worth. Kicking off the actual broadcast, a tag team match pitting Charlotte and Dana Brooke against Sasha Banks and a mystery partner. So up to this point in the feud and the month leading up to this pay-per-view matchup, Sasha Banks had no one in her corner. She had no ally against Charlotte and Dana Brooke. And I mean, she had Paige on occasion, but Paige got hurt. So it legitimately got hurt, and she hasn't been back since. So people have been wondering, who would be teaming with Sasha Banks. There were a couple different options. People were thinking Lita. I thought it might be Lita, considering it, especially at that point in time, she was still with the company. But in the end, it would end up being Bayley, which was a very, very cool moment. Her premiere WWE appearance on TV, which was awesome. I still say they should have held off until her actual debut on Raw a little over a month later, which they did. She did debut on Raw the night after SummerSlam when I was there. It was an amazing moment even then, but I still say they should have saved her first ever WWE TV appearance until that night, as opposed to having her come out here, because JBL did make note during the match itself that it was merely a one-off. I mean, you go back and listen to him talk about how she would only be up for this one match and blah, 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 and really it was only a month later she came up, but obviously she had to wrap up her rivalry in NXT with Asuka before coming up to Raw, but regardless, this was a very, very fun match. Sasha Banks and Bayley obviously having amazing chemistry together, being best of friends both in the ring and outside of the ring. Charlotte and Dana Brooke playing the roles well. Very good tag team match, leading to Sasha Banks pinning Charlotte, or actually I think forcing her to tap out, leading to her getting the title match the next night on Raw and beating her for the belt, shockingly, on the first Raw of the new era, I guess as you would call it. But again, awesome way to kick out the show. The fans were very much into this. After that 6-man tag team action, the Wyatt family taking on the New Day for the very first and last time. I thought it was bizarre they brought back Bray Wyatt, who had been gone from TV for about 2 months with an injury. They brought him back as a heel because he was starting to, it was only a week, but he was starting to gain momentum and gain some traction as a babyface when he first got hurt right after WrestleMania, and then they brought him back as a heel. And this would be the end of this incarnation of the Wyatt family anyway, so I'm not really sure. I guess they really wanted to do that one New Day feud, even though the tag titles weren't on the line here. It was bizarre. But still, for what it was worth, the feud was kind of going back and forth. I was not the biggest fan of the feud itself. More often than not, they tried to tell a story, which I will say was very, the payoff here I thought was great, because leading into this pay-per-view, Xavier Woods, despite the fact that the New Day was joking around with the Wyatt family, which again I was not a huge fan of, but in the background you had Xavier Woods acting scared. He was afraid of the Wyatt family, specifically Bray Wyatt. He didn't know what he was capable of, and Bray playing all these awesome mind games with Xavier Woods. Really the only time that Bray has ever done the mumbo jumbo hocus pocus bullshit, and it paid off in a victory for him and his team. Shockingly scoring the victory in clean fashion here, which I thought was great. But yeah, the match ended up being very, very fun. Again, the feud itself was nothing like must-see, but the match itself was a lot of fun. I'm not going to say it was the next Shield versus Wyatt family, but it had that chaotic feel to it that you would not see all that often from the Wyatt family, at that point in time or even today, even though there really is no Wyatt family to speak of. But, I enjoyed this, especially again at the end here with the payoff of the Xavier Woods and Bray Wyatt story. It was Xavier and Bray, the two legal men. Xavier Woods was scared. He's like, what do I do? And people were thinking they might split up the New Day, which obviously didn't happen. All those reports were complete bullshit. But, yeah, with Xavier Woods acting afraid, he's like, what do I do? And then all of a sudden, he just starts taking the fight to Bray Wyatt. He says, fuck it, and goes after him. The crowd goes crazy. He gets in a bunch of offense. He takes out Braun Strowman. He takes out Eric Rowan. But before he can take out Bray Wyatt, gets hit with the Sister Abigail. 1, 2, 3. The Wyatt family emerges victorious. Again, very well told story here. The in-ring action itself was very enjoyable, resulting in above average, better than expected 6-man tag team match. For the United States Championship after that, Rusev defending against Zack Ryder. Now, I foolishly, being a Zack Ryder fan, thought he had a shot of winning here. I mean, they did build up Zack Ryder pretty well to their credit. He did beat Sheamus clean, shockingly. I mean, by that point, Sheamus meant nothing. But Zack Ryder did beat Sheamus clean on an episode of SmackDown prior to this point. And they had been building him up. They had been building him up pretty well. Darren Young, who was also on this show. You would never believe that a year later, but he was contending for the Intercontinental Championship of all things. These were two brand versus brand matches, so I thought there was a decent chance. I predicted, not thinking that they could, but that they would, that Zack Ryder would take the U.S. Championship to SmackDown, and then Darren Young would bring the IC Championship to Raw. Of course, didn't happen that way. I'll talk about the Young-Miz match later on. This was enjoyable. I thought this was good. I mean, the crowd was not super into Ryder. I don't really think they had much of a belief that they thought he would win. But for what it was a good match. I like that the commentators, I think it might have been Byron Saxton, who brought up the fact that it was Zack Ryder who Rusev beat in his first ever Raw match over 2 years earlier, which I'd completely forgotten about, which was cool that he brought that up. I'm sure Zack Ryder mentioned that on Twitter around this point in time. I remember him talking about that, but regardless, good match. Rusev wins. Zack Ryder. I like the finishing sequence here. Zack Ryder being made to look good in defeat. For what reason, I have no idea, just because he went on to do tag team stuff with Mojo Rawley, who we'll talk about in a brief second, but yeah, at the end here, I thought it was great. Zack Ryder hit the Rough Rider on Rusev, but instead of covering him, he got cocky. I mean, they didn't tell that story, but he wanted to add insult to injury by hitting him with the, the elbow drop from the top rope. He misses, gets hit with the knees from Rusev, who capitalizes with a kick to the head, and then forces him to tap out to the Accolade. So he had him in the Accolade. Ryder almost got out of it, and then he leaned back and he did the same version of the Accolade to Ryder as he did to Kalisto, and that's how he won the U.S. Championship to begin with. So again, telling that story very well. I thought that was great. And afterwards, Rusev beating up on Zack Ryder and making the save afterward. It is Mojo Rawley making his WWE TV debut. The crowd really had no idea who the guy was, or frankly didn't care. Despite the fact this was supposed to be Mojo Rawley's hometown, crowd could not have given two shits. There was a very small pop, but by and large, they didn't really care. But it's not like this led to a Rusev-Rawley match or anything along those lines. It would really, because Rusev was on Raw and the Hype Bros were on SmackDown, really all it did was lead to the Hype Bros becoming a tandem on the main roster. That's really all that it did. But yeah, I thought this was good, though. Not a great match, but for what it was, considering that Zack Ryder was getting a title shot, even though no one thought he could win, I thought it was good. Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens up next in the brawl to end it all, essentially. It's not what it was billed as, but that's pretty much what this was, for the time being anyway, because they would go on to have another match literally a month later. But to really end their rivalry that never got a proper conclusion in NXT or the main roster. You know, they had matches at the Rumble, at WrestleMania, and Money in the Bank, at Extreme Rules, at Payback, and finally, they settled their score once and for all in this one-on-one encounter, and it was amazing. I would not argue with anyone that calls this the best main roster match, or best match period, of 2016 for WWE. I don't know if I would say it was my number one, but it's certainly up there. It was definitely my top 5, I know that for a fact. That and the Nakamura match from the TakeOver Dallas show from a few months earlier. Sami Zayn is a Match of the Year candidate. He was a go-to guy for the Match of the Year candidates in 2016 between the Nakamura match, this match, and the 4-way with Cesaro, Miz, and also Owens at Extreme Rules, which I was there for. But yeah, this match was amazing. Again, the storytelling was sensational. These guys know each other so well. And this was the match I had waited so long for. Again, I really liked their Payback match from May of that year too, from 2 months earlier. But the thing about this match that I liked a lot was that it was the style that we were not getting in NXT. Now, the NXT matches we had between these two were very good, but it was more about Owens beating the shit out of Sami Zayn and winning the championship. It was more one-sided. It was a lot like John Cena versus Brock Lesnar from SummerSlam 2014. This was very, very much evenly matched between the two. Sami Zayn taking the fight to Kevin Owens, taking a nasty bump halfway through, which was not... I think it might have been planned. I'm pretty sure it was planned because then Owens would go on to work over the shoulder and the neck of Sami Zayn throughout the remainder of the contest. And just really going back and forth. A lot of exciting action here. At one point down the stretch, I think it was Sami Zayn who hit like two... I forgot what you call them, like backhanded suplexes? I could not tell you the exact name, but he hits two of those signature suplexes that he's known for on Owens back to back, and the crowd goes fucking nuts. They stand up on their feet, and a lot like at Extreme Rules, when they got a standing ovation from the crowd, they got a standing O here too, from the audience in Washington, D.C. It was an amazing sight, an amazing visual. These guys really going all out. Owens hitting the pop-up powerbomb on Sami. Sami gets his foot on the rope. In the end, Sami hits the haluva kick on Kevin Owens, but before Kevin Owens can fall down, Zayn catches him, and the commentators are like, oh, maybe he feels remorse or compassion for his former friend. But no, he just wanted to add insult to injury, just be even more of a dick to his former friend, but rightfully so. Propping Owens back up in the corner again, hitting a second haluva kick for the victory. The decisive win for Sami Zayn. So again, just an awesome match here. Very well told story, and a great win for Sami Zayn. You would think that from here he would go on to win the championship, but that would be Kevin Owens. Believe it or not, the loser in the match went on to win the Universal Championship the very next month. Whereas Sami Zayn wasn't even on the main card at SummerSlam. The guy made the fucking kickoff show with Neville against the Dudley Boys. One of the most random matches of 2016. So, yeah, again, the aftermath here was atrocious, but the match and the build-up and everything about this bout was just pure perfect. It was pure perfection, so I really, really love this match. Definitely the match of the night for me. After that, we had women's action, more women's action, two women's matches on the same show. Natalya taking on Becky Lynch after Natalya turned on Becky Lynch at the Money in the Bank pay-per-view. Good match here. I mean, the crowd was so red hot for that Owens-Zayn match. They were kind of dead for this match, and which is fine. It was a well-built feud. Nothing too exciting about it. Pretty basic. But I like the fact they had a women's feud for SmackDown that was not over a championship, which was pretty cool. So again, they worked well together, had a nice match. In the end, shockingly, surprisingly enough, Natalya picking up the clean victory. So that was a pleasant surprise. Becky Lynch loses again, but, you know, Natalya just turned. They needed to give her heel heat, so I understood giving her the victory, but still a good match. After that, by far the worst match of the night, not even close, for the Intercontinental Championship, The Miz versus Darren Young. So this was really weird. The match itself was fine. You know, they tried to build up Darren Young. He came out of nowhere, won that Battle Royal on Raw to earn that shot of the Intercontinental Championship on this show. He beats Alberto Del Rio, who a lot like Sheamus meant nothing by this point, on Raw before the pay-per-view. Has a great Miz TV segment with Miz on a SmackDown before the show, and it seems like he's got a real shot of winning the title. Now, it seemed like for a while they were intent on pushing Darren Young, which is why they gave him the title shot here. But then the finish was just bizarre. Like, no one knew what the hell was going on. It looked like a double countout. They said that the end result that I'm looking at here on Wikipedia is that it was a double disqualification. No, I don't know where that came from. So basically the finish was that Miz did something to Darren Young, who was just out and about in the ring. He was out in the ring, in the middle of the ring. So the Miz is at ringside after Maurice cost Darren Young the match, or she's attempting to. Bob Backlund gets in her face. Pretty sure she slaps him. He goes friggin' nuts. Coming to his wife's aid is the Miz. Miz and Backlund go at it, face to face, getting in a heated argument, and heated encounter, whatever, confrontation. Backlund goes nuts. Miz pushes Backlund down to the ground, and then Darren Young follows that up with a chicken wing on the outside, and then he gets disqualified like 10 seconds later. Again, for what reason this was in double DQ, I have no idea. It was obviously wanted to keep the title on the Miz, yet still protect Darren Young. But I honestly believe because this finish was so atrociously executed that management just aborted Darren Young's push. Because this was the last we ever saw of Darren Young in a prominent spot on the show. He went on to do that awful feud with Titus O'Neil, his former Primetime Players partner. For whatever reason, they decided to put those two back together for a brief bit before splitting them up again. And then O'Neal was the heel again, and the feud sucked, and the matches sucked, and no one cared. And the feud was just disappeared. It got no proper conclusion on TV. It just kind of just kind of faded off into obscurity and ended on Superstars, I assume. And that was the last we saw of Darren Young on Raw. Pretty sure we have not seen him on Raw since. I know he got hurt a few months ago, but beyond that, he has not been on Raw since. And we haven't seen Bob Backlund either, which is a massive shame. So the match was whatever. Just the finish sucked. The finish was, there's no doubt about this. There was no, arguing that the finish here was really badly booked. It damaged Darren Young. I know they were trying to protect the guy. It made no sense. Everyone was confused as hell. So really, beyond this match, the show is perfect. But I'll get more, on my overall thoughts at the end here. After that, we had a 6-man tag team match. John Cena, Enzo Amore, and Big Cass taking on the Club, consisting of AJ Styles, Luke Gallows, and Carl Anderson. Really fun match. Really fun match. And as I've said before, as I'll talk more about in my... I've said it in random video blogs and whatnot, but I'll talk more about it in my SummerSlam review next month before SummerSlam this year. That the story for this John Cena AJ Styles feud was so perfect. A lot of people, and myself to an extent, were kind of upset that the Cena Styles match in Money in the Bank ended in interference from the Club, from Gallows and Anderson. So then that sets up the 6-man tag team match for this show with Enzo Amore and Big Cass, who were white hot at this point in time, coming to Cena's aid, evening the odds, and in the end, the babyfaces score the victory. So with the Club out of the picture, because Gallows and Anderson went to Raw, Cena and Styles went to SmackDown. So with Enzo and Cass and the Club out of the picture, it was back to being Cena Styles, and then Styles would go on to beat Cena one-on-one clean at SummerSlam. Again, the storytelling with those two from, right before Money in the Bank last year up until the Royal Rumble this year was so amazingly well done. But at any rate, though, the match itself was a lot of fun. It is worth noting, though, that Enzo and Cass did get mic time before the bout. John Cena did not. They were a lot more over than Cena was in the show. And it's not like, oh, we hate Cena. But Cena, I don't know. I mean, Enzo, and Cass, they all had great chemistry together. And fun fact, too, Enzo and Cass have talked about it before in past podcasts and whatnot, is that really it was Cena who discovered them. He was backstage at an NXT taping years ago, and he was about to do a segment with Damian Sandow, a dark segment, and he called out Enzo and Cass to do the segment with him. They got over huge, and the rest is history. I know they're broken up now, but and it really is a shame. I mean, beyond this match, Enzo and Cass went on to do nothing on Raw. They came out of this match looking like huge baby faces, way over, and they really should have put them in the tag title match at SummerSlam. I know they did the New Day in the Club instead, which really, in retrospect, sucked, because the feud was not good. The matches weren't that good, and the SummerSlam match was just also very disappointing. But really, after coming... when you really think about it, how dumb is it that the Club, despite the loss here, went on to contend for the tag titles at the next pay-per-view? And I know the New Day and Enzo and Cass were both babyface tandems, but we never got that match 2-on-2, because Enzo and Cass went on to do nothing. New Day dropped the tag titles later that year, and now Enzo and Cass have been broken up, and the New Day are on SmackDown, so we never got that match, unfortunately. But as for this match, again, I hate to keep on going, but that's the whole point of the reason why I do these pay-per-view reviews a year later, is to kind of look back on what was and what could have been. But the match itself was a lot of fun. Early goings were solid, well wrestled. Enzo Amore in the ring for quite a bit. Ends up tagging in John Cena, and those guys go at it with him and AJ Styles. The closing sequence, the final few minutes of this match were very, very fun. The crowd was into it, very chaotic. A lot like the earlier 6-man tag team match with the Wyatt family and New Day. And in the end, John Cena, after hitting the AA on Styles and Gallows making the save, and Styles hitting the Styles Clash on Cena and Big Cass making the save, finally Cena hits the Attitude Adjustment off the top rope to AJ Styles, scores the victory again, only temporarily getting the upper hand over Styles before those guys would finish off their feud at SummerSlam, where Styles would win. But as for this match, a lot of fun. Did Enzo and Cass a huge favor, despite the fact that WWE would not ride with that momentum, a lot like Sami Zayn coming out of this show, and they would just kind of fade off into obscurity from this point forward, unfortunately. Before the main event, we had the highlight reel with Chris Jericho and the returning Randy Orton. I love this a lot. Definitely one of the more memorable, entertaining highlight reels that I can remember in the past couple of years. So Jericho was still in the midst of doing a stupid idiot character, and quiet, and that whole character, that whole shit. He was very entertaining. Orton comes out like a house on fire. He's awesome here. Orton was awesome in this segment. And this is the Orton as a babyface that I want, that we do not have nowadays. We have like the crazy Orton, the boring Orton, the content Orton, the non-motivated Randy Orton, the creepy Orton, but we don't have this Randy Orton. If he's not going to be a heel, he's got to be this entertaining, laid-back babyface that we haven't seen in probably years. I mean, we got to see that a little bit where he was injecting more personality into his matches and promos in like early 2015. And we hadn't seen that since, and then he got hurt. So upon his return, he kind of incorporated that personality into that segment here with Jericho. These guys work very well together anyway in the ring and on the mic. So it was no surprise this was a very fun and enjoyable segment. Taking pot shots at each other back and forth. Orton says, I wanted to make a grand return, and the best way to do that is facing Brock Lesnar, not facing Fandango. Obviously taking a shot at Chris Jericho coming back to face Fandango at WrestleMania 29. The crowd popped for that, not huge, but they did pop for that, so they understood the reference. And then Orton would go on to say, Jericho was saying that I could lay you out with one code breaker, or Jericho, or rather Lesnar's going to lay you out with an F5 and take you to Suplex City. And then Orton says, all it takes is one RKO to get to Viperville or whatever. No enhancements needed. Because it was around this point in time that it came out that Brock Lesnar used enhancements for his match at UFC 200. Or UFC, whatever it was. UFC 203, whatever pay-per-view was. I'm pretty sure it was UFC 200 earlier that month. Which was a great name drop reference from Randy Orton. The crowd loved that. So that was really cool. Then he ultimately did lay out Chris Jericho, the RKO. Again, Orton came across really, really well here. It was very fun, and it got the crowd going. It didn't kill the crowd before the main event. I thought this was great. And also planted the seeds for Lesnar and Orton and further that feud going into the SummerSlam pay-per-view. Then we have the main event, a triple threat match for the WWE Championship. The first, only, and possibly last Shield triple threat match between Dean Ambrose, Roman Reigns, and Seth Rollins. Dean Ambrose came into this match as the defending WWE Champion. If you're just watching the show, you might have no idea that Roman Reigns had been out on TV for over a month, pretty much since the match was announced, because he got suspended for 30 days. So he came back on the show. His first match back since the suspension was on this show in the pay-per-view main event, contending for the WWE Championship. So that sends a hell of a message there, Vince. But you had to do the Shield triple threat. That was really the only way to end the era. I mean, at the time I was saying they should probably have canceled it. They didn't. And obviously going on to do the match anyway, which I'm glad they did because this match was excellent. Definitely one of the best matches of the year. They had a great triple threat, playing past spots from their history. The video package that preceded the match itself was great too, playing off their history and the formation and the split and what they've been doing since, with Rollins winning the title, and then Reigns winning the title, and then Ambrose winning the championship. Again, just the never-ending story between these three guys is great. And I wish we would see more of that today. It was really the end of it here, because Reigns and Rollins would end their feud on this show. They would go on to do their own things going into SummerSlam. So anyway, the match itself was great, playing off past spots, with Rollins getting a chair after reuniting with Ambrose and beating the shit out of Roman Reigns, who was sporting a beard here, which was a great look for him, but he would shave it off like 2 weeks later. He looked like a badass with that beard, even more so than he already does. I love the spot when Ambrose and Rollins were working together against Roman Reigns, going for like the Shield powerbomb with only two people. And then Rollins, in typical Rollins fashion, a la the Shield breakup from 2.5 years earlier, about 2 years earlier, hits him with a chair out of nowhere. Again, awesome spot. Rollins and Reigns going at it in the middle of the ring. Rollins lays him out with the pedigree. Reigns kicks out. Reigns almost scores the victory. He lays out Seth Rollins with the spear. He gives him a Superman punch. So Rollins is out. Reigns is about to score the victory until Ambrose re-enters the ring, lays out Roman Reigns with the dirty deeds, and scores the surprising 3 count to retain his title. The finish that I wanted to see, and the finish that we needed to see, to solidify and cement Dean Ambrose as a top dog in WWE. Of course, that would go on to mean nothing when the match at SummerSlam with Dolph Ziggler was a fucking joke. It was a mid-card, forgettable match. That match was a complete waste of time. But yeah, Ambrose and Roman and Rollins really put forth an amazing effort here, and the match delivering on all of our high hopes and being as great as we thought it would be. But yeah, this was terrific and the right outcome to, again, going with Ambrose as the WWE Champion and the lead face of SmackDown Live. They would, kind of sour on his push a number of weeks later, and AJ was the guy to put the title on by Backlash. But that SummerSlam match with Ziggler, which I'll talk about more next month in detail, did him no favors. But this was the right ending and outcome to the old new era of WWE. And I will mention this too, you had Daniel Bryan, Mick Foley, Stephanie McMahon, Shane McMahon at ringside for the match, the respective authority figures at that time for each show. I'm glad they didn't get involved. I'm glad they didn't interfere, as they probably thought they would, and there was no fucking stupid non-finish and all that other dumb stuff. They gave us a clean finish, as they should have, and then afterwards, I loved it. After Ambrose wins, representing SmackDown Live, Daniel Bryan and Shane running all around the ring going nuts that their boy won. Then the SmackDown locker room piles out. They celebrate with Dean Ambrose. Everyone's going crazy. The Usos, as great as the celebration itself was, the best part about it was the Usos, who were holding up Dean Ambrose on their shoulders, and they were none too pleased based off the just expressionless look on their faces that Ambrose retained the title and Roman Reigns did not win. That was so great. And they would go on to turn heel like less than 2 months later anyway, but I thought that was hilarious. But yeah, that closed off the Battleground 2016 show. Again, overall, an exceptional show, far and away, in my opinion, my favorite show and the best pay-per-view in WWE in 2016. Really not a bad match in the card other than Miz and Young with just a mediocre match with a terrible finish. But beyond that, this was a great show. Really no complaints at all. The two women's matches were good and great. An awesome way to kick off the show with Banks, Bayley, Charlotte, and Dana Brooke. So we technically had a debut of Bayley on the show. Wyatt family probably having one of their best matches ever. Sans the matches with the Shield from years earlier with the New Day on this show. Rusev and Ryder was exactly what it needed to be. Mojo Rawley made his debut on the show. Zayn and Owens, one of the best matches all year. Fucking phenomenal match. Already talked about Natalya, Becky Lynch, Miz, Young, already talked about that. The other six-man tag team match with the club, Cena, Enzo, and Cass, was a lot of fun. The highlight reel was a lot better than I thought it would be. A lot of fun as well. And the main event, Ambrose, Reigns, and Rollins. Terrific. Again, one of the best matches of the year, hands down as well. So definitely check out the show. Battleground has gotten better and better every year. I don't know if this year's installment will be quite as good, especially with the main event of Orton and Mahal in a Punjabi prison match. But it could be good, but it's going to be hard to top this show. I mean, Battleground 2013, as I've said before, was one of the worst shows that WWE's ever done, especially in the past decade. The first pay-per-view that I had missed, first live show I missed in like 3 years maybe. That's how bad it was and how little I cared about it. Battleground 2014 was good. It was a lot better. It was good. Battleground 2015 was really good. That was a lot of fun. This show was tremendous. This was a great show. Awesome show. So check it out when you can. Ahead of Battleground this coming Sunday. Next Tuesday, before I move into my WCW reviews, I am talking NXT Arrival. We're talking about I don't know where I'm going to end. Probably, I'm not really sure. Like maybe all the TakeOver events up until late 2016. I'm not really sure yet. But what is for sure is that next Tuesday, I am talking about NXT Arrival. After that, NXT TakeOver. So on and so forth until, and also in between, we're talking SummerSlam, No Mercy 2016, Clash of Champions 2016, all the other stuff from last year and whatnot. So we're doing the NXT live shows, the NXT reviews before we get to the WCW pay-per-views, which I know you guys are highly anticipating. That'll be here soon enough. But in the meantime, and in between time, folks, all the support of the show is greatly appreciated. Drop a like, comment, share the video, subscribe to the channel for daily content. Boost our numbers. I thoroughly appreciate it. Have an awesome rest of your week. I'm Graham G.S. Matthews. I'll catch you right back here next Tuesday for another all-new episode of WrestleRant, and I'll catch your ass down the road.